Hey guys, it's Brody, and in this video I'm going to be answering all of the cubing questions that you guys have been afraid to ask. If you've got your own questions that you'd like me to answer, leave them in the comments and I just might go over them in a future video. How do you motivate yourself to cube? In my opinion, cubing is something that you really shouldn't have to motivate yourself for. It's something that you either enjoy or you don't. And if you really enjoy doing it, there's no need to motivate yourself to do it. And if you don't enjoy it, there's no shame in not doing it because no one's requiring yourself to. And if you don't enjoy it, then there's no point. Is learning full OLL really worth it? I would say yes, but not by a ton. I know a lot of people that are sub 10 or really close to being sub 10 that still use 2-look OLL for certain cases that they just haven't learned because they're too lazy or don't see the point. If you see a case so often in 2-look OLL that you memorize what case you're going to get after you orient your edges, then that's going to be barely slower than knowing an alg for it. So if you get really used to how you solve things with 2-look OLL, then learning full OLL won't bring a ton of improvement on that. What is the easiest event to get fast at? In terms of getting a good world ranking, I think 2x2 is the easiest one to get fast at. Because all you really have to do is get good at turning, of course, and then get decent at building sides and learn a bunch of algorithms and one-looking and stuff. That's for world class, but if you just want top 1000 or something, all you need, I believe, is low 3, which is not something that takes a lot of practice to get to, especially compared to getting top 1000 in any other event. So I'm going to say 2x2. Not that that's a low skill event at the top level, but it's probably the easiest to get kind of close. Is practicing OH better with your left hand? Yes, it is for most people, because most people do mainly R and U moves when they're doing 3x3 with two hands, and your left hand gives you better access to those moves than your right hand for one-handed. I do know some people, for example my friend Danny, who has some sort of problem with the muscles in his left hand, so he does right-handed OH, and he's really fast, but most people choose their left hand. What if I'm just stuck where I'm at and I don't have the capacity to do better? Here's the thing, you definitely do have the capacity to do better, and if it seems like you're stuck, then there's something wrong with your process. Generally, when people get stuck and they're not improving, it means that they're practicing the same things over and over again, or they're only practicing the things that they're already really good at. What you need to do is find your weaknesses and practice those more than anything else, with specific targeted practice instead of just solves. How fast do you have to be at 3x3 to podium at a small competition? Of course it depends where in the world you are, but here in the US, the slowest I've ever seen podium in 3x3 at a competition is maybe 11 or 12 seconds. So I'd say about there. In some weird circumstances, or if you live somewhere where cubing isn't as popular, then it's probably going to be easier than that. But that's the general best case scenario if you want to podium in 3x3. How do you easily make cross plus 1? Well, depending on when this video goes up, I either have a cross plus 1 tutorial that's about to go up in a few days, or it's already out. And if it's already up, the link will be in the description, so you guys should click on that and watch that to learn how I build my cross plus 1. I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of you. Any advice on how to talk to new people at comps? My biggest advice is just don't be shy, don't worry about walking up to people and starting a conversation. The thing about competitions is that you know for certain that everyone in there has this hobby in common with you, and if you don't know where else to start, that's a great place to start a conversation, and I'm sure that a lot of people would be willing to be friendly and have a conversation or even become friends with you. What does it mean when somebody says CR or UYTWR? Well, CR stands for Continental Record, meaning North American record in something, South America, whatever continent you're on. And I believe that is supposed to be YouTube Unofficial World Record, which basically means the fastest solve of something that's on video. So it's not official, and it's not even the unofficial world record. It's like the unofficial world record, but it has to be recorded. Can you switch cubes during an average in an official competition? Yes, you can. You just have to give your judge a different cube after you're done with the solve. You can just tell them you're doing that and they'll let you switch. When people say sub 10, sub 15, or sub 20, do they mean at or below the number? They mean below the number. So if you average sub 20, your average is under 20 seconds. When you plan your cross and F2L pair, do you just picture your hands doing the moves or do you memorize the letters and then execute the solution? I actually remember it by picturing what happens to the pieces on the cube. I don't exactly remember in hand motions, that just kind of comes naturally, and you definitely don't want to remember it in notation because that's really clunky to do and it will be slower. What you should do is try to picture how the cube will change when you do certain moves. I average around 21 on 3x3, but I'm too nervous to go to a comp. Is it worth going to a comp? Yes, it's always worth it to go to a comp no matter how fast you are. They're not super common, especially depending on where you are in the world. So if you get an opportunity to go, don't let it pass by. Make sure to go as often as possible. What's a counting average? I think you're referring to what's a counting time in an average. And the answer to that is when you have an average of 5, you have your 5 times, but you get rid of the best one and the worst one and average the remaining 3 in the middle. The 3 in the middle are your counting times because those are the ones that count towards the average. They're ones that you add up and divide by 3 to get your average of 5. So if I got the times 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, I would have a counting 7, a counting 8, and a counting 9. What is an AUF? AUF stands for Adjustment of the U face, and it's the U moves you do to line up the cube and solve it after you're done with PLL. What time does it usually take to get to round 2 in a comp? Where I live, it's usually about sub 20, but it depends very much on how big the competition is and where you live. What advice would you have for new cubing YouTubers who are trying to get on their feet? My biggest advice is that you should try to keep an eye on what kinds of things people want to see and make that kind of content. And I don't mean in a kind of scammy way where you take other people's world records and upload those. I mean, you look at what kind of topics people want to see, make videos about those, and then from there, just make them as high quality as you can so that when people watch them, they'll want to subscribe. That's all the advice I can really give. What is winter variation? Winter variation is an algorithm set where you have an R, U prime, R prime, F2L insert for your last pair, and you have all of your edges oriented. And you can do an algorithm, I believe there are about 30 of them, depending on how your corners are twisted, in order to skip OLL while inserting your last pair. Can you honestly recommend a custom setup puzzle to anyone? I'd say the main appeal of custom setup puzzles is for people that aren't knowledgeable enough to know how to set up puzzles themselves, or people that are too lazy to do the trial and error for it. So if you fall into either of those groups, I absolutely recommend it. I fall into the laziness group and a little bit with the lack of knowledge, so I always appreciate it when I get custom setup puzzles from the cubicle. Should I practice Ru and CFOP, or stick to one? I honestly recommend picking one and sticking with it because you can only devote a certain amount of time to practice, and if you're practicing both, you'll only improve at half the speed as if you devoted all your time to practicing one of them. What do GT and GTS stand for? Honestly, I have no clue. I probably could look it up, but I really don't want to. I have no clue, honestly. Is 2x2 pretty much a luck-based event? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that what average you get is very dependent on what the scrambles are. So you could get a 5 average on certain scrambles and then a 3 average on other scrambles. It's very luck dependent in that sense. But in another sense, it's not. Because it's not like you can get lucky scrambles and then beat other people that have a higher skill than you. Any particular round of 2x2 on any scrambles, the people with more skill are always going to win. So it's not like there's luck that lets you overcome greater skill, but it is luck based in what specific results you get. What is the average amount of moves for cross for a sub 10 solver like you? I'd say it's about 6. That's what I get usually when I count cross moves for a little bit. But if I did a much longer session of that, I'd be willing to bet that I'd get about 5.8 or something a little bit under 6. So that's my prediction. Maybe it's a little bit different depending on who the solver is, but it should be somewhere in that general range. Maybe a little bit less if you're color neutral as well. Is color neutrality any good? Yes, it is. Basically, it means that if you have a good cross on red, for example, I wouldn't be able to do it because I can only do white and yellow, but you can take full advantage of that lucky red cross, which basically means that you never have to deal with harder crosses, you get to plan easier first pairs a lot more. In general, being color neutral offers you a lot of extra advantages over not being color neutral. Why can't I get quicker? I constantly practice, but I'm stuck on my current time. Like I said earlier, if you're practicing but you're not improving, it means you're practicing in the wrong way. Usually it means that you're practicing the same thing over and over again instead of trying to deal with your weaknesses. So I'd recommend taking a step back, figuring out what your weaknesses are, and then figuring out a plan to practice to improve them. Is it realistic to have a career in cubing, or is it too risky? At this point in time, the only way to really have a career out of it is to work for a store like The Cubicle or something like that. Content creators don't make enough money for it in cubing. Speed cubers don't get paid enough for it. So the only real way is to sell something at the moment. Is it worth it to not learn new algs for OLL or PLL but just mirror them? Sometimes, but I'd usually warn against that. So in certain cases, like for Fat Soon versus Lefty Fat Soon, it can work and it's also really fast, but there always or almost always are other really fast algorithms. For example, you can do Lefty Fat Soon as back soon from the back right instead, and that's arguably a little bit faster. And for certain situations, it's definitely not good to just mirror the algs. For example, the RB perm, which is the one that goes R prime U2, R U2, is really fast. But if you try to mirror that for RA and do LU2, L prime U2, that's a lot slower than the RUD algorithms that are out there for RA. So I generally advise against just mirroring your algorithms. So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this was very educational for you. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, share the video with your friends. All that helps me out a lot. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. This is Brody, signing out.